Kekalainen. Here we go.
Yes.
We're starting early today, guys, because we're starting right away because I'm going to be out of here at 1:45 to head over to the Flyers Capitals rookie game.
Yes, I have the.
Oh,
Watch out!
crap.
I have the rookie tournament flu.
Guys, sorry, but Sportsnet's calling me right now. I got to take this. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
No problem.
No problem.
Continue without me.
We're going to mute you. I muted you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that the I know we're gonna start in a second, but
yeah.
I received the rookie tournament flu. Whenever you go, after a summer of heat and you go into a hockey rink, especially the Budweiser Gardens. I have to thank everybody there for all their help and everything. But it was extremely, extremely cold, and now I've brought that cold with me. So.
I love that cold. No, not the cold, not the physical cold, but I love the cold of a hockey rink after summer. I love it.
I normally do, and I was prepared. I brought a jacket and everything, but it just, I guess people just, their immune system, they don't react well to that sudden change.
Yeah. Well.
But anyway, I got plenty of cough drops. I'm good to go.
The game is being shown today online, guys. It's on CSNPhilly.com. It's also on, I think, the Cap and CSN in Washington too. So you will be able to watch the game. I'm guessing they're not going to geo tag it. I hope they don't, so you can only see it in the areas that near each of those things. If they do, that's what VPN's for. All right, so you can find your way around at hidemyass.com. Anyway, we'll start the show now. It's the 16th. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, September 16th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello. That empty chair is Josh Rimmer.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. Coming to you today, I'm actually going to see my first hockey. You saw some hockey over the weekend, Mike. It's really nice to watch. I mean, I'm so sick of baseball. I can't even begin to tell you. But, I know you love baseball. But the funny thing about this time of year is actually switching back and forth between baseball and hockey in my mind. It's such a dramatic change. Like baseball fits with summer to me, perfectly, and hockey is the fall. So when you have these intense, baseball games, because of course we're getting into the playoffs and the pennant race and all that stuff, but then you have preseason hockey games which are totally different. Oh, it was a great football game last night though. I did watch that.
Yeah, this is this time of year and April when you've got the NBA, the NHL, baseball starting, and the football is over by February. But October and April are the prime targets for sports fans. And yeah, I mean I'm anxious to see preseason hockey games. The NFL is going right now. Buffalo's 2-0. Yay. And Major League Baseball is drawing to a close, and we're going to have the wild card in the playoffs. So yeah, this is great, and I saw a couple good games over the weekend with the Toronto and Chicago, and Toronto and Ottawa. Some fights, some pretty good hits. So yeah, I'm anxious to see some preseason games. And in Buffalo next week we have the Team USA prospects game, so you get to see some of the prospects for the 2015 draft. So that'll be interesting as well. Yeah,
that'll be great. And today's Capitals Flyers, like I said. So you get a lot of actually pretty big time players like Scott Lofton playing in the game today, who is many people in Canada will know as like the captain of Team Canada in the World Juniors last year. And there's the Flyers have a good group of players, good group of young players, as do everybody. I mean, I'm amazed. I honestly do believe that the level of talent coming into the NHL has never been higher than it is right now. I just think that you just look around and older players will be the first to tell you it's scary. They get to camp and these kids are just like they've been shot out of a cannon and made from another species almost, because they've been, since they were small, didn't just eat fluffernutter sandwiches for lunch and Cokes and and have been like we did and just have been completely
I know that one player is for the Flyers that people are interested in is Shane Gostisbehere, one of the defensemen who's he might be on an outside shot at making the Flyers. I know that in London, I saw Teravainen, the Blackhawks Blackhawks prospect who they brought over from Finland last year. He sort of blended into the woodwork, didn't really stand out, but it's one game in September. The Leafs had a kid who was the Ontario Hockey League leading scorer named Connor Brown, and to your point about people who are just growing and changing. I mean, this kid when he was drafted, I think was like 150, 160 pounds. He's now 6 foot, about 180, and led the Ontario Hockey League in scoring last year. Probably will play in the AHL this year, but a guy who I believe was a 5th or 6th round pick now has an outside shot of making the NHL in a couple years. So there's a lot of talent out there.
Well, yeah, and Johnny Gaudreau has actually been tearing it up, and people are very, everybody I talked to out there is just saying, nothing but glowing things about Johnny Gaudreau, as is Mantha in Detroit, who's been really tearing it up as well.
Right.
Another guy who seems destined to make the team. So yeah, to me, this is the big. It's going to be fun, and we got a lot of players playing today. I'll definitely report back on what I see today. We'll talk about it tomorrow, of course. But that this will be a fun. It'll be fun to actually watch hockey. So on that note, we're going to get right to the news today, and I'm going to start out with Ryan Johansson, of course, because that is kind of the big story right now. I think until it's not, right? Because there are other players out there, other RFAs that aren't signed, and I think that Johansson's sort of taking the thunder from a lot of them, but we're going to get into some of them tomorrow. In my blog tomorrow is going to be the RFAs that you don't know about that really you should be watching that aren't signed yet, because there are quite a few of them. But now right. Johansson, people were saying things got ugly in this, and in my opinion, I didn't see this as getting ugly. I read this article, and you could say what I liked about this is it got real, maybe, but it didn't get ugly. I wouldn't say that this was, Would you call this ugly, Mike?
I call it slightly adversarial. I think that, right now, from the reports from Aaron Portzline in Columbus, they're about $3 million apart on a bridge deal. And, Johansson had a fantastic year. The Blue Jackets had a fantastic year last year. But he's not a $6 million player coming out of his entry-level deal. He had one good season. And the point of view right now for Columbus is, well, we want to pay you basically what Colorado paid Matt Duchene. The Leafs paid Nazem Kadri on par with Derek Stepan's deal with the Rangers. Yeah. That's reasonable. He's wanting $5.5 million on a bridge deal, which I think Kurt Overhart, who is his agent, is. I think what he's doing is shooting the moon here. I think he's trying to get him the best deal on a bridge deal he can possibly get, probably over $4 million, and he's saying, well, I want 6, and then the compromise is 4. But I don't know if Kekalainen is going to go for it. I mean, I don't know if it seemed to be a shot across the bow at Johansson and his agent and saying, you got to get in here. We have to work as a team. We need to start the season all at the same time. None of this holdout crap.
Right. And so let's read some of the quotes here. This is what I like about Jarmo and always have. He is Finnish in every possible way in terms of the fact that he is bringing to you a straightforward, subtle sarcasm at times that comes with only Finnish players, and it's right there. So you have to read that for as it is, right? Mm. So he says, draw your own conclusions. Basically. So here's this is what he's saying. I'm going to get to the top of the article here because Aaron Portzline did a great story on this. This is where Kekalainen starts. Our success is going to come from being a team, not a bunch of individual or stars, whatever. We've talked about this, of course, with the Blue Jackets. This is what they are. And he questioned the motivation of Johansson's agent. So there's, this next line is sort of that, but not at the same time. It's the subtle thing. To me, it's usually you go through training camp together and get ready. When our camp starts, that's it. After that, the focus is on the guys who are there on tryouts or guys who are under contract. That's it. That will be the only focus. Well, of course, that is what a general manager will say, and that's a good thing to say because it keeps the pressure away. To me, that's where he should go. So he says, draw your own conclusions based on that, right. And then he says, from their side, hopefully this should be about Ryan Johansson and his future. Well, that's a little bit of a shot at the agent. Okay, there's no question about that. But
right,
go ahead.
Right, but that's Kekalainen basically throwing out what I consider an empty threat. We're gonna move on if Ryan Johansson is not in training camp. Well, okay, you really can't move on because you don't have anybody of the quality of Ryan Johansson to play as your number one center. So you moving on means you're moving on from a guy who's potentially a 30 to 35 goal scorer and leading your team in points. So them moving on is baloney. This is a game of chicken. And right now, Columbus and Kekalainen is trying to get Johansson in for as cheap as they possibly can. I think the number is they're $14 million under the salary cap, and they just don't want to spend $5.5. They have a budget, I'm sure. They don't want to spend $5.5 million on a player. But you know what? You may have to, like you said yesterday, they may sign a 1-year deal. That might be the compromise.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where this is heading. I think a 1-year deal. But so it goes on from their side. Hopefully, this should be about Ryan Johansson, his future, his long-term future, and his long-term future with the Blue Jackets. This shouldn't be about setting a new standard or about an agent breaking records. Okay, so that's the ugly part of this. Fine. Remember, Kekalainen hasn't been talking directly to the agent yet. This has been going through Bill Zito, their assistant GM, at this point. So. And that's another thing I like about the way he's handled this, honestly, because he's just, okay, let's get to the beginning. I'm going to focus on everything else, and if we're that far apart, then, explain that to my assistant GM, and we'll figure it out from there. His potential is great, Kekalainen says, but we're not there yet. After 1 year, we're willing to invest franchise-type money into his future. We're not there yet after 1 year where we're willing to invest franchise-type money into his future. Mm-hmm. Do it once or twice more. Make us pay. Go ahead and make us pay. So he's laying it down there. He's saying, and this is what I like about, that to me is very, very Kekalainen and very, Finnish as well, I have to say, about just like straight up, oh, this is just go ahead, it's up to you.
But see, the thing is, and this is negotiating in the press. From the point of view of the player and the representative, it is about setting a record. It is about, okay, well, Derek Stepan made $3 million. We got to make 3.5 because we think, or we got to make 4 because we think we're better than Derek Stepan. We think we're more valuable to the Columbus Blue Jackets than Derek Stepan was for the New York Rangers, who had Brad Richards and Chris Kreider and Dominic Moore and other guys who could play center. You don't have a lot of guys who can fill in that position that Ryan Johansson would vacate if he holds out. And I think holding out, as Josh said a couple days ago, Johansson holding out, I think probably would be a disaster for the Jackets. They need him in. It's just a question of how much it's going to cost them.
I'll say disaster for that. I don't say it. I'll let Josh jump in too if he wants, but I know I probably shouldn't in this situation. But to me, I'll just say this much. Since Josh's father, works with the team and all that stuff, we're going to let him stay out of this conversation. But okay. I'll say this much. I think that it's not a disaster because they aren't because of the reason Kekalainen said this isn't Subban to me. Subban was a disaster because Subban was so vitally important. This is important, but he's not, and you're going to need him in the playoffs. You're going to need him down the line, but you can start the season without him, I think.
Subban sat out the first week of the lockout shortened season, and then he came in for, I think it was under $3 million. And I think if you talk to Mark Bergevin now after he paid Subban $9 million for 8 years, that he probably wished he would have paid the $5.5 million for the long-term deal. I've seen whispers of them, potentially saying, okay, well, if we're going to end up paying $5.5 million, let's get him locked up on a long-term deal rather than the bridge deal. If they want to go the way of the Edmonton Oilers and sign a young player coming off entry level for $5.5-6 million on a 5-year deal, that is a way to go. At least you have cost certainty and you eliminate this happening a year or two from now. But it's a question of whether you feel comfortable paying Ryan Johansson after one good year big money. If it's me as a manager of an NHL team, I don't. I want him to prove that what he did last year wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, and that's what he wants him to do. And I think that that's where this will go eventually. This is not, it does concern me a little bit that the agent is Kyle Turris's agent, and that is one thing that I definitely do feel is an issue. But because the way the Kyle Turris situation was handled, I always thought was not handled well. And I'm not the only one who felt that way, of course. But so we'll see. I have nothing against the agent at all, but I'm not convinced yet that this is a disaster. I think, and I'm not convinced that this is getting ugly or anything like that. I just think it's more or less, Kekalainen talking straight up just about, what he's saying in the same way, as anyone else. So Josh, you're what else you got for us?
Well, I mean, minor hockey news. I call it minor because it's not a huge thing, but the Carolina Hurricanes, adding to their scouting department today, have hired, remember this name, Sergei Samsonov.
Oh boy.
Joins the organization as a part-time scout based out of the Detroit area. It's a name I haven't heard too often. I don't know where Sergei and Ron Francis ever cross paths?
Oh, sure. They're in Carolina.
Carolina. That's right. I keep forgetting Samsonov was in Carolina before.
Yep. Won a Stanley Cup there. Yeah, he's definitely. Samsonov. I always liked Samsonov as a player. He reminded me of it was just such a reminded me a lot of Sammy Kapanen, honestly, in Philly. Just continually. And
now, he was a guy that was kind of even overrated, I think. I mean, remember when he came into the league, there was so much hype.
Yeah, there was hype, but at the same time, really what he was what he was, and as time went on, he didn't drop off quickly. He continued to maintain that level for a long time. So it's not, overrated. I always consider like a guy who comes in, just doesn't perform, and sort of falls out. Samsonov was what he was. I mean, people may have ranked him at a certain level, and that really wasn't what he was. But as time went on, Samsonov became good good two-way player. He really developed his game to fit and to stay in the NHL, basically.
He had two huge years, right?
Yeah.
In 2000, 2001, he had 75 points in 82 games. Then he had 70 and 74, and then it just tailed off after that. He just didn't go over 40 points except for the 1 year with the Hurricanes in 2008, 2009. And if you remember, Samsonov was on that big line in Boston with Joe Thornton. Obviously, a big reason why he was able to put up some big points.
Oh yeah.
Drafted in the same draft, 7 picks after Thornton. So I mean, I think if you asked the Bruins, he was a disappointment. I mean, I think they thought that he was going to be. He scored 20 goals four times, 4 to 5 years, or 4 times. But I think that they thought he was going to be more of more and just not what he was. So I mean, I was never really.
That's about right. I mean, I never had high expectations for him, and every time I saw him, I was impressed by him. And I never looked at him like a big time high draft pick. But I know he's a sharp guy, so he's going to fit in really well in Detroit for sure. Here's a good one. So Bill Daly and Paul Holmgren today were nominated. This is what I wrote my blog about, to receive the Lester Patrick Award. Or I guess are going to receive it, not nominated, are going to receive the Lester Patrick Award, which I can't think of two people that I'd rather see get this award, to be honest. Both are really like the good people in hockey, and Bill Daly is such an important person to this sport. People just have no idea, and this goes back to 2 lockouts ago, of course, when he sort of was thrusted into the limelight, when Bettman and Goodenow were having a tough time getting a deal done, and Daly and Ted Saskin stepped in and kind of they were still negotiating with Bettman and Goodenow's intentions, of course. So to me, I find this like the perfect person. Like Bill Daly is what I've always loved about him. You go to these NHL events, and the media is hanging out, and he'll be one of those guys who's just hanging out, having a drink with the media. He doesn't put himself onto some kind of pedestal. He's just a normal guy. He's half Canadian, which was actually very important during the lockout. Something I don't think that was played up very much. But the fact that he was half Canadian and Bettman, wasn't, honestly, unfortunately, had a play in the lockout, the way the perception was. But Daly was he works with Bettman very closely. They really are a good complement to each other. And I've always admired the guy, and the fact that he's the kind of guy that anybody can just send an email to him, and he'll respond to you pretty quickly. I mean, he was definitely back in the day, was a crackberry guy for sure, and was unbelievable at getting back with emails when people weren't so unbelievable. Now people are much quicker with emails because everybody has smartphones. But he was one of those guys who was always on top of things, and I'm happy for him. I think that he's a very under-recognized character in what's been a very successful 10 years for the NHL, and I think he's a big part of it. As Bettman gets recognition, Daly should get recognition as well, and I'm happy. I think he's good. He's a good guy. You've dealt with Daly, Bill Daly, Josh, right?
Yeah, many times. Good guy. Big fan of Daly.
Yeah,
And he
really.
gets back to you, too, when you text him.
Exactly. He's really quick. He's straight. He's quick at returning, and he'll answer any question, no matter how stupid it is. And I'll have a stupid. You know what I mean? You have a stupid lockout, a CBA question, he'll know it. Like a stupid. If you have a stupid, I always tell people, I've told writers of mine, they ask me a stupid CBA question, which we, aren't CBA scholars, have to know. Bill knows everything about the CBA inside and out, and is able to answer everything, and really worked tirelessly. 24 hours a day to help get hockey back after the missed season. So he was hugely important in that.
Mhm.
And as for Paul Holmgren, Paul does a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people don't realize, and I want to try to get Paul on here sometime. He's one of these guys who I don't think anybody has a perception of what Paul Holmgren's really like unless you've actually been with him in person, because the perception of Paul Holmgren is probably like, Mike, what would your perception of Paul Holmgren be?
Well, it's tough to not have the perception of him the way he was on the ice.
Right.
He was a tough character. He was a no nonsense. He had some offensive ability, but just a tough grinding winger for the Flyers of the late 70s, 80s. Good player, but yeah, if I was in the press box, and I know, like, for one of the games in Philadelphia a couple of years ago, I was there.
Yeah.
I was, I don't know the guy, so I was like almost a little fearful. Like, should I go up and say hi? He's scary.
He's a scary character. He's scary. Dave Brown is scary. I've run into
Right.
Dave Brown many times in the elevator. These guys, they sort of had that. They were part of that whole Flyers era, right?
Right.
Of guys, but the thing about Homer was, he was of course, he was in Bobby Clark's shadow for a long time as assistant GM here in Philly. But he did a lot of negotiations, a lot of trades, even when Bobby Clark was the GM. I would always hear this, people didn't necessarily, I wouldn't say they distrusted Clark, but they really felt comfortable talking to Homer. And the one thing that was constant about that people would tell me, agents and other GMs would say, that Homer was honest as could be, and was also the kind of guy that if he didn't have an answer, would tell you he didn't have an answer and would say, I will find that answer out and I will get back to you, as opposed to a lot of GMs who really try to, always be like, oh yeah, pretend they know what's going on and then make mistakes. Holmgren wasn't and is never that way. He's very meticulous about how he does things. He's extremely funny. And this is the crazy thing about him. He's unbelievably dry, dry sense of humor. But when he laughs, he laughs like he just really just belly laughs. And you would never expect it, because he's very very stoic, but when he finds something funny, he's hilarious about it. So, but he does so much for charity. He's been such a part of hockey in Minnesota still to this day. Where he grew up, and was really one of the first big U.S. players in some ways. Back in his era, that I think he has some record for U.S. players. Bill would know this one, but there is a record, like he either had the first hat trick in a playoff game for a U.S. player or something. There's some kind of crazy record that Holmgren holds for U.S. players like that. That's not it, but yeah, someone might know it.
Most fights in one game by an American.
Well, he was a vicious fighter, and no question about that. He defended many players. On his team, and was the kind of, but it was also able to score goals. Surprisingly, would score a goal here and there that would really just, frustrate other teams. And he wasn't without skill, and obviously, I remember when we did an interview with him for FlyerBuzz TV, and I was driving him around in my car, and we were talking to him. And one of my favorite things was I had just talked to Brian Burke, or had lunch with Brian Burke or something like that, and he had told me that I had to remind Burke, or Burke had told me that I had to remind Homer, this is how it went, of a fight that they had when they fought each other in the AHL. And that Burke was convinced to this day still that he won that fight, and Homer's convinced that he won that fight, and it's like one of these things that went on and on and on between the two of them for a long time. So there's that's the kind of guy he is. He's just not, he loves college hockey. He's a big college hockey guy, and that's one of the reasons he's seen the Flyers are always sort of involved in college hockey players when they come out. So.
Eck, his best year was 30 goals, 35 assists in 1980. And I believe that was the year they made the finals.
Yeah.
And and he had 10 goals and 10 assists in 18 playoff games.
Yeah, that was
and
that.
267 penalty minutes in that year. So, that's sort of like Milan Lucic numbers. 30 goals in 74 games and almost 300 penalty minutes. That's pretty impressive. But he was a quality player.
Oh yeah, and there are some classic, if you want to YouTube Holmgren fights. There's really good ones. I mean, he short of Dave Brown, was probably one of the more flamboyant fighters and just took guys down. But like you said, I mean, that's a lot of points. That's a lot of goals in 1980. That was the team that went 35 games without losing. That's the streak team that lost the Islanders because of a bad offsides call. We'll leave it there. Yes, in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's how that went down. Our buddy Paul Bissonnette has a new home, Josh, or at least is trying to have a new home.
Yeah, he's Paul Bissonnette has signed a PTO with the St. Louis Blues. There was a lot of talk of him going to the Washington Capitals for a while, and he had tweeted. I thought he tweeted, either he tweeted or he said on the radio that he was waiting for the team that he was expecting to sign with to make a trade before he could sign with them. That never happened. There was a lot of rumors and speculation that it was the Capitals. We have no idea if it was or not. But now the St. Louis Blues today announced that he has signed a PTO with the St. Louis Blues and will be a training camp.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, obviously, kind of part of me wanted to see him. Bissonnette has become probably more famous for his off-the-ice stuff than he is for on the ice. But he can still play, and, his Ice Bucket Challenge, though, was the memory of that most people will have. And he's really a dream for NHL franchises. If you want, I mean, as far as his ability to be out there in the real, in the social world, and if you're trying to get your social marketing together, like the Columbus Blue Jackets are having social media day at some point. I heard coming up. So this is a big thing right now with social media, and Bissonnette has been on the edge of that the whole time. He's just like the. He's really he's hilarious, and he does bring a lot to the team, and he can still play, and he wants to see. I think if anyone gives him a shot, I think Hitchcock's a good spot for him. Hitchcock might see him and really like him, and if nothing else, he gets into some games and can show some people what he can do elsewhere. Might not be St. Louis where he ends up. Mike, your thoughts? Mike, you're muted.
It's a good risk, a good low risk, invite. I mean, I like what a number of teams do when they bring in get players on PTO. They get a free look at them. They can see if they fit in with the chemistry of the team. They can see if they can still play, and they move on from there. And then I think it's very interesting near the end of training camp and just before the beginning of the regular season, where these teams will either make trades to make room or send people down. I know that like Toronto, there's Henrik Talinder, former Sabres defenseman, who's invited on a PTO, and now we know Bissonnette in St. Louis, Aaron Rome, which Josh mentioned yesterday in Detroit, which I'm sure is going to have is basically a disaster scenario in case De Kaiser doesn't sign. At least they have somebody with NHL experience. So it's these additions, these invitations are interesting, but we'll see. It's going to be a couple 3 weeks before we know whether it means anything or not.
Yeah, you don't see that many people with invites make the team really when it's said and done. There are some that make it, and occasionally you have a really impressive one make it, like we did last year. But Josh, what else do you have?
Well, interesting note. This was announced right before our show started today. I don't know if you guys talked about it or not when I was off on my phone call, but TSN today announcing a major expansion to its industry-leading hockey news and information team with the debut of TSN Hockey Analytics, a new focus on advanced stats. The TSN Hockey Analytics team breaks down Corsi, Fenwick, zone starts, and more advanced stats from the new frontier of the hockey world. TSN Hockey Analytics will be featured in original content, delivering a new perspective to the industry-leading hockey coverage across TSN platforms, including live game broadcasts, TSN.ca, the TSN Go app, and TSN Radio across the country. Now, popular hockey analytics writer Travis Yost is joining TSN as a columnist, appearing every Tuesday and Thursday during the season on TSN.ca and a frequent guest on TSN Radio. Also joining him in the hockey analytics department is TSN resident stat guru Scott Cullen, and from the Globe and Mail, James Myrtle, who's going to join TSN team as a Toronto Maple Leafs analytics specialist. Guys, I really should have focused on this analytics if I wanted to get a hockey job.
We've known about this for a couple weeks because Travis, wrote for HockeyBuzz for the last 3 years. And Travis has been amazing with us, and we couldn't talk about it, obviously, even though we knew about it until it got announced officially. But we do want to congratulate Travis on this whole thing because he's obviously a very talented kid, and he's a really entertaining writer. And this is the kind of the job he was made to do. He's an analytics guy. He's covered the Ottawa Senators for us, and it does leave us with a big hole in Ottawa, and we're trying to fill desperately. We have been interviewing people all the last couple of weeks. Trying to get that spot. We have down to a couple spots, so we'll have a good a new Ottawa writer very, very soon. But yeah, we really, I'm not surprised that. I think we jokingly even said that it was only a matter of time before Travis got hired by a team to do analytics.
And he got hired by a network.
Yeah, and it's we've had several hockey. This is not the first HockeyBuzz writer to get hired by a network. But this is this is probably like the fourth or fifth now. But this is great to see for Travis. And
I guess the fact that math was my worst subject in college and high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that
bore you guys.
I think that there's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say, does this stuff bore you guys at all? Like the analytics stuff?
It doesn't bore me. It's the fact that I still don't know whether it's applicable to determining a quality hockey or a quality hockey player. I mean, there's the whole uniformity of stats from one arena to another. All I know, like with the Maple Leafs, what they're going to be doing is compiling their own stats. That was the hiring of the founder of the Extra Skater website, of Cam Chiron, Kyle Dubas as an assistant general manager. He's not strictly an analytics guy. I mean, he's as a 28-year-old who's been GM of the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds for more than a few years. I mean, he's a hockey man as well as an analytics guy. But I just don't know. I mean, everybody is diving headlong into the analytics pool, and I don't know whether it's water or lava, because I don't know whether this is really determinative of what a good hockey player or a good team is.
You know what this kind of reminds me of when the whole Moneyball thing came out. Everybody started wanting to do the Moneyball thing.
Yeah.
Now one person does the analytics thing, and now everybody it's kind of like the same thing. Wouldn't you agree?
I always make the analogy regarding Moneyball is the fact that the prototype for Moneyball was the Oakland A's. The team that still has not won a World Series has been doing Moneyball, or doing what Moneyball describes the longest. But a team like the Boston Red Sox took some aspects of Moneyball, some aspects of the players that you bring in due to Moneyball, but they had an unlimited budget. So it was sort of Moneyball, pardon the expression, on steroids. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, I mean, okay, I'm not saying that these some of these analytic systems aren't going to be helpful, but I think you lose something if you don't follow the game and follow what your eyes see. When you see a player whose numbers might not be great, and I'm sounding like Tim Lewicki here, but pardon me. If you see a player here whose numbers aren't great, but you see him hustling all over the ice, hitting everything in sight, that's a player I want on my team. Be damned the friggin' numbers.
Precisely, and I'm with you 100%. And it's I mean, I love analytics. I'm glad that these people are getting recognized and getting jobs for it. I've always loved statistics. I don't know how many people do. I don't know what if we've thought about HockeyBuzz having like an analytics person, like it's purely analytics person for a while, and we've looked at the blogs that people have put up about analytics, and they really aren't that bigly received. It's not like a gigantic. There's a definite niche core group that loves this, and I'm in that group. I don't. think analytics should be used for picking players, but I do love just the fun of stats, and I'm just big into stats.
See, to me, it's like kind of reading the CBA. I kind of fall asleep.
No, it's better than that for me. I mean, this is hockey, and as a Stratomatic fan and all that stuff growing up, I do have a love of this stuff. I do think it's awesome. Whether or not a lot of people care about it, I guess we're going to find out. Like that's the whole thing to me. Whether or not it's just these guys are going to still be doing this 5 years from now is questionable. Whether or not analytics kind of gets merged into everything else which is what has happened with Moneyball in my mind, like you're saying, Mike, where it's just like, okay, this is part of it. The one thing I do think that's interesting about this, and I might get some flack for saying this, but I think that this is the major networks like the TSNs and of the world. This is their way of giving bloggers their due by separating them out and saying, you're not hockey people, you're analytics people. And so they're bringing in popular bloggers who have followings, but they're not threatening to the regular hockey writers that they have, because they are specific to this little part of hockey. And I think that there's something about that bothers me. I haven't quite put my finger on it yet. Like I think that we have writers on Hockey Buzz who are excellent writers, and I'm not going to embarrass anyone here, but excellent writers who write incredibly knowledgeable stuff about the team as well as any writer in the city. But they're just covering the team like the other people are covering the team, so that's a direct threat. Where I think that you end up with an analytics person who can sort of get away with, okay, that's my niche, and in a way they get more social media presence. They get all these things that they would get from hiring a blogger without like threatening their own reality. That's something that I feel like is happening. I don't know.
Well, I mean, and I will agree with that. I know that a lot of people said when Tyler Dello got hired in Edmonton that it was for his work with analytics, it was for his numbers, his knowledge, but it was also the fact that the Edmonton Oilers were one of the teams that was primarily trashed by the analytics crowd, and the hire of Dello sort of like diffused the criticism. Okay, well, they're going to be more wise and more knowledgeable about analytics because now they have MC79 Hockey on there. Now they have Tyler Dello, and like, okay, it doesn't work that way because you still have the same damn players. So and it matters whether they listen to him, whether they give his opinions and his numbers weight, and whether they change that team accordingly because of his presence. Who knows?
Right, and that's what we're going to find out, right? I mean, we'll find out in time, and for now, I think these are great writers, and I hope people realize that part of these. Some of these people are good writers. Like to me, that's the thing that I really would like to see more of. And some acknowledgement that they're not just stats monkeys throwing out things. They are writers, and they get the game. Like Travis gets the game. He's written some very good articles about the game itself, and that is what's kind of missing. And I even was hoping perhaps that if he's just writing analytics for something, he should still cover the Ottawa Senators for us because he could actually cover a team. But the networks aren't working that way, of course. So. Which is inevitably going to be their downfall. But that's just that's my side of things, that they're not seeing it that way.
And the teams as well. I mean, Dello is not going to be writing his blog when he's working for Edmonton, and I think Cam Sharon was working for Yahoo. He's not going to be doing anything. An Extra Skater has been pulled off. It's not online any longer, but it will give birth to a whole new generation of websites, and I'm sure like as the season goes on, we'll see different versions of Extra Skater and different versions of MC79 out there.
And you will, and those things holes inevitably get filled. They do, and that there's a hole in the marketplace for that kind of writing. That it gets filled by somebody. It's just the natural way that the internet works. So. They'll get filled, and there'll be new people that come on, and those people might get hired away too. And I mean, honestly, this is a dream for people, to get a chance to write for big companies like this. And and I'm not taking anything at all away from it at all. I think it's awesome, and I think that they are great analytics people. I also hope that they realize they're also getting very good hockey people on top of it. That's all.
Well, I'm going back to school. I'm going to take calculus.
You might as well just start writing analytics blogs. Yeah, I mean that's the way to go. It seems like, and that's a little bit unfair too, because I'm not. Listen, Travis is really good at what he does. I mean, every time I would try to do a statistical blog, I would get, he would have like 20 reasons why I was wrong, and he was usually right about most of them, because he knew analytics that well, and that is definitely a skill. And there are people, Dan Talensky used to be that way too with us. There are people who just are able to do that at a high level, but we're still not seeing the actual bloggers who are getting read more than anyone else on the internet acknowledged by these major networks. They're afraid of them. So that's the one thing I'll say. I mean, and that's not about me because I would never take a job at a network. I'm where I am forever. But there are great writers out there who really are, who are good enough to do that. So, but I do have to bug you. I'm sorry, guys. We had to end the show a little bit early today. I have to get in the car. I have to get over to the rookie camp. And I'm going to write a little bit about Paul Holmgren and adding into my blog about Bill Daly now. And then I also should have some stuff on Ryan Johansson this afternoon, so we'll find out more about that situation as well. But we'll be back tomorrow, normal time, 1 o'clock. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the games. You can watch it on CSN Philly, CSN Washington, if you want to. See you then.